The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent, including Olas Media.
Olas Media presents Inside the Crime Files with Anne-Marie Schubert.
My aunt and my cousin were murdered. My brother was missing.
She was babysitting her 22-month-old nephew, David. When Chase spotted the lone mother in her house, he decided to pounce.
Almost every night I had dreams of riding my bike in the neighborhood and, all over the place. And I just come up on him. I found my brother. Those were the dreams that I've had.
I am Anne-Marie Schubert, and this is Inside the Crime Files.
Inside the Crime Files is produced by Olas Media in San Diego, California.
Welcome to Inside Crime Files with Anne-Marie Schubert podcast. I'm Anne-Marie Schubert. This podcast takes listeners inside and behind the scenes of the investigation and the prosecution of some of the most horrific and notorious criminal cases in California history. Today, we're going to talk in our second part about one of the most horrific and sadistic cases in Sacramento County history. This is the case of Richard Chase. Our first part was the prosecutor and one of the investigators. That was Albert Locher and Carol Daly. And today, we're going to have our second part. And today, my guest is Kevin Ferreira. And Kevin lost 3 of his family members to Richard Chase, who murdered them in 1978. He lost his brother, his cousin, and his aunt. So welcome, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So let me just kind of explain to the listeners, Kevin, how you and I met. So you and I met about 8 years or so ago. You live here in Sacramento. I think I was running for district attorney at the time when I first met you. And you happen to work in Sacramento in I would say, the building trades industry. Fair to say?
Yes.
So we went to have coffee one day just to talk about some of the issues that are facing Sacramento. And I'm not going to forget this because we're sitting at a coffee shop. And in the middle of that conversation, you said to me, there's something I need to tell you. And I think you probably knew I had done DNA and I was involved in cold cases and things like that. And you then proceeded to tell me that your family was killed by Richard Chase. And I was taken aback. I understood the gravity of those crimes. I didn't know all the details because I think you and I are the same age. I was probably 14 at the time that these crimes occurred. Mm-hmm. But then you also told me kind of how you recovered from that horrific crime. And so that's kind of partly why I wanted to have you on, was because you are to some extent, the human toll, as I describe it. You are, an example of how these crimes impact families in our communities. So I just really appreciate your willingness to come on here and talk about, what happened to your family, but also what happened to you afterwards, if that's all right.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. So let's start off by this. First of all, January 1978, January 27th, I'm sure you remember it very well. Maybe you can just kind of, first of all, tell us who in your family was killed and just kind of how old you were at the time.
Yeah, 14, and I was 14 years old, and the family members were my Aunt Evelyn, my cousin Jason, and my brother David. Evelyn's
last name was Murath, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and just to get the listeners' understanding, this is the murder of your Aunt Evelyn, your cousin Jason, who was 6, and your brother David, who was
22 months old.
22 months old, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit about your family dynamics, like, who was David's mom, all that, where did you live, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I was going to, at the time, I was going to Foothill High School here in the Sacramento area. My father and my stepmom lived close to my aunt's house around the country club area. And, and my stepmother, her name was Karen, and my father's name is Tony Pereira. So, and on this particular day, my Aunt Evelyn was babysitting my brother. She had her son home as well, and they were planning a trip to go to the snow up I-80. And then that's when, the tragedy happened.
So your Aunt Evelyn babysitting your brother, did Evelyn have other children as well?
Yes. She has an older daughter, Lori Maroth, and then a son, Vernon Maroth.
Okay. And where were you close to your cousins, your brother?
Yes. Yeah. Lori and Vernon, I grew up with them, so we were close cousins.
And then are you living with your father and stepmom, or are you living elsewhere at the time?
I was living with my mother and my stepfather at the time. And so, my father and Karen, they, were living next to my aunt.
Okay. So your brother David was Karen and your dad's child.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So, maybe kind of walk us through this particular day, January 27th, 1978. How do you get notified?
Actually, I was spending the night at a friend's house. And then another friend's mother calls that friend's house, knowing that I was there, and asked me to just come down the street to see her. And so I do. And then that's when she told me what happened, that it was on the news. And, none of my family members, I heard it from a friend's mom before I heard it from any of my family.
What did you, and you can tell us whatever you're comfortable with, what did you hear and what did you ultimately learn?
I just, my friend's mother told me that, it's on the news, and that 3 of my family members were murdered, and that I needed to get home. And so I did.
Right.
And then at that time, going to my father's house, and my stepmom's house, it was a sad time. Just, people are crying, and that's all you could do. At this time, everyone knew that my aunt and my cousin were murdered. My brother was missing. So there was always a hope that he would be found alive. But my father already was accepting the fact that he was, dead. Your
brother David was missing for about, 2 months or so before?
Close to 2 months, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, kind of, you're a teenager, you're a young teenager, your brother's missing, your aunt and your cousin have already, are murdered. What is that like between January and March when your brother was found?
So at this time, like I said, everybody is sad. You're just relying on the information that the police are telling you with the investigation. And I had very limited access to that.
Right.
Into those conversations at the time. But basically all you could do is cry, that's what all the family members were doing. And being a teenage boy, almost every night I had dreams of,
right.
I'm out riding my bike in the neighborhood, and, and all over the place. And I just come up on him. I found my brother. Those were the dreams that I've had of always riding up somewhere, and there he is. And but that was never meant to be that way, though.
Right. So so in March of 78 is when David's body is found, right?
Yes.
So what did tell me how you found out about that and the circumstances, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it was, with the family, the, David was found, and, being, the age that I was exposed to just very little detail, but I knew it was bad from how, the reaction from my, stepmother, Karen, who was a lovely woman.
Right.
And, it was bad.
What did you, I mean, sitting here today now, you're 58, right?
59.
Okay. I mean, you obviously, I assume, now understand more the facts of what happened to your family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know, pretty much, I guess, everything I need to know.
Right. Right. Pretty disturbing. So, kind of walk us through. You find out when you're 14, when your brother's found, then he gets arrested. You find out Chase gets arrested, right?
Yep.
Okay. So there was a trial that was done. It was a change of venue, went on in Santa Clara. So kind of maybe, were you involved, not involved? How much did you find out? That kind of stuff.
Not really that involved with the court cases. I knew that, my stepmom never missed one, Karen, and you just heard very little about it. But then, it was through the trial I learned that, of the mental condition of Richard Chase. A sad thing on, that circled around him as well.
Right. Did you learn more about kind of what had happened to your aunt and your cousin and your brother through the trial, or was it later in life that you found out more of the horrific details?
Later in life. Yeah,
Okay.
it was, through the years, I just remember hearing that, a book was written, and never read the book until probably 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there were details in the book that I already knew from coming across law enforcement people who knew about the case, who knew me. So,
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So Evelyn at the time had Lori and Vernon. How old were they at the time of the murders?
Lori's same age as me, and Vernon is about a year and a half.
Can you describe for us kind of the impact this had at the time it had on, start with your dad, in terms of his sister and his nephew and his own son being killed?
Yeah, it was really from that my dad just wanted to leave here. He didn't want to live here at all anymore. And originally we're from Hawaii, and so eventually he sold his business that he had at the time and moved to Hawaii to get away. He just didn't want to be around this and the memories, so to speak.
I remember you telling me before about a conversation you had with your dad about, I think you were 16 or so, about the impact it had. You remember that?
Yeah. So at this time, I'm in Hawaii with my dad, and we were together. We were talking about my brother David, and my father. Because my parents divorced, I spent most of my time with my mother. When David came, when my father remarried, and then there's David. I think my father believed that he could really be a father, and so he had all of his hopes and dreams within David. And so when that happened to David, it just shattered him, and it was like the son he was hoping to have, he knew wouldn't happen. So yeah.
Did you guys have if it's okay to ask, did you have a strained relationship with your dad?
I guess it wasn't like horrible. It was just there were times when I was like a standard teenager. I didn't agree with certain things that my dad believed in and things like that. I think my dad was hoping that with David being under totally living with him, that there
Right.
wouldn't be the resistance that I was given.
All righty. What about Karen, your stepmom? Did the marriage last, or did they end up?
No. So what happened is Karen wanted to have another baby, and my father did not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume though, how long after David was killed did they divorce?
Oh, not long afterwards. Yeah. I would say probably a year, maybe.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then tell us, Kevin, your cousins, Lori and Vernon, who were
Mm-hmm.
Evelyn's other kids that survived. What impact did you stay in touch with them? One of the things I
Through
think
the years, at that time I would go and visit, them, and at my uncle Vern's house,
right.
and they were staying there, but they weren't having it. It was hard on them, and I can remember. I don't think there was any kind of counseling provided for anyone. To be honest, I know that I think my cousin Lori struggles to this day with the relationship with her mom. That the last thing in her memory of her mom was her and her mom were fighting, and I think that's just too much for her.
I remember on the Golden State Killer, one of the victims that was killed, her daughter was about Lori's age. The same thing. Last conversation she had was with her mom, was an argument, and it really changed the course of her life for many, many years. I mean, it's just, Kevin, I always talk about the human toll of crime, and it's, those are things that you just really can't get over. So let's kind of go back to you in terms of your life path after all of this. I mean, you've lost 3 family members, including your own brother. I mean, I assume you graduate high school, but what is your trajectory then?
Right after high school, I went into the Marine Corps. And so from there, through boot camp, I learned that I was kind of a natural shooter. I went into the infantry, and then from there, you learn about other options. And I learned about the Scout Sniper School that the Marine Corps had. And I applied, got in. And so my whole motivation of that was what happened to my family. And that it was, I'm going to learn these skills. And if something like this ever happened again, I can do more than cry.
Okay. So it was the motivation was how to protect you and your family, really.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you had told me when we had coffee that I think some folks said they didn't think you could do this. You could be good at being a marksman. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what happened?
It just so happened the whole motivation of the tragedy of my family members. I actually finished top of my class, and so I was happy about that. But I think the people who didn't think I could do it or wouldn't do very well at it were my senior officers. In the Marine Corps, I was kind of a low-key person, didn't want to be noticed or have a lot of attention, but I studied. And so when I finished number 1, it was a surprise to a lot of people. And my family members were really taken back. Like, why would I, one, go into the infantry, and too. Why would I become a sniper? What kind of skills is that when you're done with the military? And
so you become basically a sniper for the military because not just what happened to your family, but this idea that perhaps if it ever happened again, you could protect them.
correct. Yeah.
Interesting. How long were you in the Marines?
6 years.
Okay. And during that time, were you ever in combat at all, or kind of maybe walk us through what you saw in the military?
So in the military, spent time in Southeast Asia and in Central America. Panama, Honduras, and stuff like that.
And then why'd you ultimately get out?
To be quite honest, at that time, there was no campaign, so to speak, wars or anything. But we were told that there were too many people in the Marine Corps and that the Marine Corps wanted to release folks. And it was pretty evident of that because all of a sudden there were jobs in the Marines where no one can get promoted. I mean, everything slowed down.
Right.
And so it was definitely a sign to get out. And so.
How old were you when you got out of the Marines?
23.
Okay. So you went in right after you turned 18.
Yeah.
Okay. Since this all happened to you and your family, I mean, what do you think is the most lasting memory you have about all of it, if you don't mind me asking?
What can I say? It's Richard Chase. Why was he out in public?
Right.
Right. And with his condition. And, it was something that happened under the governorship of Ronald Reagan, that he closed mental institutions in the state. And Richard Chase had a severe mental issue and who shouldn't have been out in public. And I had a high disdain for Ronald Reagan, that if it wasn't for that decision that he did, that maybe my family members would be here today.
Yeah. I don't blame you on that one. I mean, especially in today's era when we see so many folks in our communities across the country that have serious mental health issues and are perhaps not getting the treatment that they need, right? I mean, Kevin, sitting here today, talking today, I should say, we're 2022. It's been 40 something years. Do you think this crime, what happened to your family, still affects you personally today?
Yeah, I would say so to a degree. I go for long periods of time without talking about it. But then some folks, once they learn, if I meet somebody new and they learn about it and they ask questions. And so then at times, in a conversation, there could be breaking points in the conversation emotionally that comes up, which always surprised me because I think, the crying's done, but it never is, it seems. The hurt, the pain it's still there. It just comes up.
Right.
So
one of the things that I think I've learned over 30 something years is, when people are victims of violent crime, particularly murder, it changes how the surviving family members live. It changes sometimes the professions they choose, like you. It changes how you raise your children. It changes your outlook on the world. First of all, I don't know. Do you have kids?
I have one daughter. She's 31. Did
it kind of change you in that outlook at all?
I would say probably protective. I wanted her to learn how to protect herself. So as a child, I had her in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I told her if she ever had to protect herself, to do what she needs to do to protect herself. And if she ever had to do it, to be as swift and as violent as she needs to be. And so she's a girl.
Right.
You know,
right.
so I said, so you want to surprise people. By the time they figure out that you have some skills to protect yourself, you want it to be too late for them. And so that's how she was. She knew that just to always be aware. To this day, I always scan. People notice that I don't do too much eye contact with folks because I'm always scanning around me. If I do have eye contact with someone, I'm really listening to things around me, and so it's just a heightened awareness, I guess. I don't want to be caught by surprise.
Yeah, I don't blame you on that one. It was, during the course of this crime spree by Chase, it was the same time frame as the East Area rapist / Golden State Killer. I mean, did you have that in your memory back then?
Oh yeah, I remember people
that?
talking about about that. Yeah, that was something that people were definitely talking about, even for years after the Richard Chase incident. I can remember people talking about that, even into my senior year in high school.
Right. I mean, there was a lot of community concern going on, and then you have Chase, who's committing these horrific crimes of, cannibalism and all that other stuff that goes with it, that I think it really changed the community in Sacramento quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this, just kind of like to wrap it all up, Kevin. I mean, as you sit here today as a 59-year-old man, one of the things I think is really important for the public to understand is the impact on victims. And if you had one thing to share with the public, about what happened to your family, what happened to you and your surviving family members, what do you think is the most important thing that the listeners take away?
Is to be the best person you can be. It's probably the only thing you can do to honor your loved ones who have passed on tragically, is to live the best life you can live, and not to be trapped in the torment of the loss, which is kind of like where my father is. It's just to be the best person you can be, help those around you that you can help. Because,
Right.
It really, is to honor them. It's the way, at least for me, it's the
Right.
way to honor, the memory of family members. Because my aunt was a good person. She loved helping people. So when I can help someone, makes me feel like I'm doing something that she would have done.
That's a very good lesson. Before I forget, I did want to ask, probably should have asked it earlier, but how did you feel when you found out that Chase, 1, was sentenced to death, but 2, that he overdosed on death row?
Yeah. To me, it was, I didn't feel sorry for him at all.
Right.
But I kind of questioned the overdosing. I'm like, how does that happen, in a controlled environment? But, I'm glad it happened. I didn't, to me, it was like, why should this guy be able to breathe air when my family members aren't?
Right.
So that's kind of like how I took it.
One of the phrases that oftentimes is used in the criminal justice system is giving closure to families. And, I've always kind of debated that word. And I'm just curious as we kind of, as we kind of wrap up.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Well, that's what I want to know. What do you think of this word closure when we talk about, victims?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I hear it, from other victims. But I really don't know what they're talking about. To me, it's if whoever's done this has been caught and, and they are paying the penalty for what they've done, then, like in my family, I mean, we had the bodies of our loved ones. And so it's not like we didn't have, a missing person that we've never found. So I don't know what that's like. The closure part, I don't know exactly what what that means, what people are looking for when they say that. I know that for me, it's what I just said. It's, we have to move on. We have to be people. And to me, it's, being the best person that you can be. If you're trapped in this torment and you're not being like productive, or for lack of a better word, then they killed you too.
Right.
Right.
It's a very good. Yeah.
And so to me, I that wasn't going to happen to me by a phantom bullet or whatever. It's just moving on and be the best person you can be. And with that, honor the memory of your loved ones. That's how I do it.
Very good message. Well, I just want to thank you for your willingness to be on it. I don't know. Have you ever talked about it on a public forum at all?
No, you're the first.
Oh, wow. Well,
yeah. You're the first.
Well, I appreciate it, because I think people, I think we are challenged by is that when we decide what our policies are or our laws are in this state or this country, this is what we have to always be willing to talk about, is the consequences and the impact of crime. Because if we're not willing to hear that or consider it, then we're failing in holding people accountable and acknowledging the true impact. If you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I do.
Kevin, thank you so much for your willingness to share your story. To our listeners here, thank you for joining in. You can find more podcasts on InsideCrimeFiles.com, and you can join our mailing list. And remember, this is part 2 of a 2-part series on the Richard Chinton Chase case. Thank you so much for listening.
Inside the Crime Files is produced by Olas Media in San Diego, California. To listen to more episodes, visit InsideTheCrimeFiles.com.
I am Anne-Marie Schubert, and this is Inside the Crime Files.
Olas Media.